Hello and welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock channel. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate all of you guys that are new subscribers. We see a lot of you around here now. So thank you so much for choosing to tune in to this video. Hopefully it's one that you will enjoy. If you haven't subscribed yet, please stay tuned. Make sure to hit that button. We have our first giveaway announcement this weekend. Huge things coming, so hopefully you guys are going to like that. But today, you see it on Braden's background, a mix of a South American and then an European jersey. On mine, it's Copa America. Well, Mbappe came out with a statement saying that the Euros are harder than the World Cup. Well, now we're going to bring into this video a bit of a discussion on that, Copa Americas versus the Euros, which one is tougher, some historical data of the champions and what they went on to do on the following World Cup to back up those claims. Let's see, Braden, your take straight away. Which one do you think is tougher now, using the format that makes it a lot more interesting for Copa America or the Euros? Your opinion.
Yeah, like you said, I think we have to use the current format for Copa America with the 16 teams, adding the 6 CONCACAF nations, just because, I mean, of course, we're an American channel. This one has the US in the new format, and I think it's a lot more enjoyable as a whole. Instead of last time's format with all 10 CONMEBOL teams and only 2 get knocked out of the group stage, it kind of seemed like that part of the tournament was unnecessary and overall made it a worse viewing as a whole. But I do think the common conception is that it's harder to make it out of the group in Copa America, because if you look at statistically, only half the teams do make it out. You have 8 teams making it out of a 16-team group stage with this current format. In the Euros, 16 teams out of 24 make it out. You have 4 of the 6 third-place teams making it. So the common conception that I think the general public has is that the Euros group stage is a little bit of a waste of time and kind of a technicality, just because it's very easy to qualify. Basically, you just need 1 win and you're in, since so many of the third place teams make it. I actually don't think this is the case, that it's harder, because if you look at the group stage, and I'll use this format, I'll keep going back to it, because I do think if it makes the most sense for CONMEBOL and CONCACAF to continue to have this format. We'll see if that actually is what happens, but I think it's the best format. I think it makes the most sense for monetary purposes for both federations, for them to keep going with the 16 teams. If you look at the groups from this time, and maybe they'll be slightly different in future formats, but really there's only 2 clear-cut teams that could make it out, and sometimes some groups you only have 1 that are really high quality nations. I mean, in Group A, you really only have 1 for Copa America. Group B, you really don't have any. Maybe there's 1, you could say Ecuador. Group C has a very clear-cut 2. Group D, the same thing. Now, there could be an upset to happen, but I think it's a lot more basic and easier to predict. Whereas in the Euros, I don't think there's a single team that I can pinpoint and say that you have absolutely making it out. There's a little bit more of an unpredictability factor that makes it more exciting and overall tougher as a whole, because the quality of the teams, I think the depth in terms of the Euros is a lot deeper. If you want to compare UEFA versus CONMEBOL, I think as a whole, if you average out the countries, is better, because you have 10 teams. Only one of them is really a bit of a joke, a bit of an easy win in Bolivia. And even when you go play Bolivia in La Paz or one of their stadiums in the altitude, it still can be tough due to that factor. And then in UEFA, when you see it in World Cup qualifying, Euros qualifying, there's a lot of smaller nations that are easy wins for some of the bigger teams, or even some of the mid-tier teams in Europe. But those nations didn't qualify for the Euros. So the depth in the Euros, I think, is very good. You have 24 of the best national teams in the world, especially you have a lot more giants. I mean, if you look at Copa America, there's really only 4 traditional giants that you can think, okay, these teams are going to contend for trophies. In the Euros, you've got 8 or 9. So there's a lot more, like I said before, unpredictability factor. There's a lot more possible outcomes that are realistic and not just going off on a limb and trying to predict an upset for the sake of predicting an upset. So I would say, in conclusion, the Euros is harder to win. And when you add in the fact that there's an extra knockout stage game as well, and the fact that you play a variety of different opponents with so many different play styles, I think overall the Euros is harder.
I will say that there is one factor that we can't really use for this year's because it's been played in the US. But if CONMEBOL and CONCACAF are smart about it, and commercially, really think about it, it all comes down to money. Commercially, it makes sense. If we start seeing all these nations, 16 16 teams format played in South America, the hostility of the home nation is something that it's unmatched. If it can be even Bolivia. Well, I remember growing up watching one that was in Peru, and even then, the fans travel and the hostility, the atmosphere of the fan base, the culture, the fan culture in South America is something that you can't really find in Europe unless you go to the Balkans, but it's never played there anyways. And I think that overall the stakes are a little bit higher because these teams are used to playing each other a lot more, so it builds up to the rivalry as well. So I think that I think it is tougher to play in the Euros overall, but I will say that it's more critical. I don't know if that makes sense to play in in Copa America, which traditionally is South America, but hopefully we should see both blending in. And I will go for a little bit of history. I'll start right here with Copa America, then go to you, Braden, to bring us the data about the Euro champions, how they did, and what did they end up doing at the World Cup. So really quickly right here through my list, we start talking about the CONMEBOL and CONCACAF merging. Well, 2001, and we're doing this from the 2000s onwards because it's more relevant. We're not going to fly back to the 80s, 70s. So 2001 was actually a CONCACAF storm in Copa America because we had, well, Colombia beat Mexico in the final, and Honduras somehow made it to the semis. They actually eliminated Brazil, which went on to win the World Cup the following year. So it goes to show that was crazy. Copa America grew in credibility, I think, as the years went on. And then Colombia, well, 2002 didn't qualify, missed out in sixth place in the very tough qualifiers, just by one goal in CONMEBOL. 2004 saw Brazil win against Argentina. That was a crazy, crazy campaign. I think Adriano scored in the very last minute. As a child, that was one of the best moments I saw. And Argentina were favorites to win, but the drought that they had that was broken recently went on. And Brazil, unfortunately, in the 2006 World Cup, got eliminated by France in the quarters. 2007, another Brazil win, but they fell in the quarters to Netherlands this time around in 2010. So again, not really following up with the success. 2011 had Uruguay, who were steaming hot after a great campaign in South Africa, winning against Paraguay, who also did well and, in my opinion, gave Spain their toughest game in that World Cup. So that was a good Copa America. But then Uruguay fell to Colombia in the World Cup in 2014. 2015 and 2016, I'm just going to group them together. They're basically the same. Chile winning against Argentina. And, well, 2016 was nice because we were involved and we made it to fourth place. Bit of a phony fourth place there, but hey, who cares? We were there. And, well, Chile didn't end up qualifying for 2018. So, again, the sample isn't really followed with victories and good. It doesn't result in a good campaign in the World Cup necessarily. Now, that changed recently, but before that, we had Brazil beating Peru. In my opinion, the weakest Copa America that I've seen. Thought that was horrible. Peru made it to the final. Cebolinha was the best player. I mean, look at where his career went. No disrespect, but everything was really mixed in that one. And then Brazil, well, everyone saw they fell to Croatia in the penalties. And then Argentina, first one in this list to actually win Copa America, and that was the catalyst for changing their history, really. They went on to win the World Cup, won the Finalissima before that. So over to you, Braden. Did the Euros champions fare a little bit better than the Copa America ones and backed up the claim that it's tougher, it's harder to build character, and they went on to do well in the World Cup?
Definitely a bit of a mixed bag for the Euros, like you saw with the Copa America. I'll start, like you said, with the 2000 Euros. France taking down Italy in the final. France then being the holders of not only the Euros, but also the World Cup. Then in what has become a World Cup champions curse, finished bottom of their group in the 2002 World Cup behind Denmark, Senegal, and Uruguay, only getting 1 point out of that group. One of the biggest shocks, I think, in modern World Cup history. There, Italy, the runners-up for what it's worth, made it out of their group in second behind Mexico, Copa America team. So take that for what it's worth, and then ended up losing in the round of 16 to South Korea, who, as we all know, had that historic run to fourth place in that World Cup. So not the greatest showing there to start things off. In 2004, it doesn't really get much better because Greece, what a run they had in the Euros. Absolutely, like I said, the unpredictability factor. They're one of the teams that I think is outside one of the major underdogs. I mean, they're not even at this current Euros. I don't even know if they were at the last one either. I can't recall. But they end up winning in 2004, legendary run, beating Portugal in the final, and then don't qualify for the 2006 World Cup. Portugal themselves end up finishing fourth in that World Cup, a pretty respectable performance. But like you saw a couple of times in the Copa America, like with Chile in particular, Greece not qualifying for the next World Cup. Then moving on to 2008, definitely the most successful one, Spain taking down Germany. And I mean, we know prime Spain, one of the best national teams of all time, end up winning the 2010 World Cup in another legendary run. And Germany even finished third, losing to Spain again, like the Euros. They seem to be owned by Spain in that couple of years, losing to them in the semis and then winning third place. So definitely the most successful recent example of the Euros champion and I guess runners-up as well, doing very well in the World Cup. I will just say USMNT beat prime Spain, so maybe that's another shout for Copa America there since we're in it now. But then we move on to 2012, and it's Spain again winning back-to-back Euros and 3 international tournaments in a row. Like I said, one of the best international teams of all time, beating Italy in that edition. But then in the 2014 World Cup, like I said with France, the holders curse in the World Cup strikes again. Spain getting knocked out of the group in historic fashion, including that 5-1 loss to the Netherlands, absolutely embarrassing. Chile, a Copa America team, qualifying ahead of them. And Italy as well, the runners-up, also going out to the group to 2, I guess, current Copa America teams, Uruguay and Costa Rica. What a run they had in that World Cup, making it to the quarterfinals behind Keylor Navas. Both of them qualified, and England as well didn't have a Euros to remember, but they were in that group as well. They were the favorites alongside Italy and didn't make it out. So the 2014 World Cup with some crazy results, as we remember. I think personally still my favorite World Cup as of right now. Then in the 2016 Euros, we all know Ronaldo's only international trophy, despite the fact that he was more of a coach in the final, thanks to that injury that he suffered, beating France, thanks to that goal from Eder. And in the 2018 World Cup, Portugal did make it out of the group, but lost immediately to Uruguay, a Copa America team, in the round of 16. And then France, the runners-up, ended up winning the World Cup. So a little bit more success for them. I expected them to have won the Euros as well the previous time. I think it was a pretty, not a major upset, but a significant upset, especially considering that Portugal finished third in their group. So going back to that system, and which is harder to make it out of the groups in Portugal finishing third in their group, making it out due to the format, and then they end up going and winning the whole thing, beating a France that won the World Cup. And then finally, the most recent one, in 2020, I guess 2021 because of the pandemic, Italy, the Spaghetti Mafia team, beating England in the final on penalties. And then we all know Italy, their World Cup run has been very poor recently. Didn't qualify for the World Cup before it or after it. We're in it 2018 or 2022. England did make it in 2022, lost to France, the eventual runners-up in the quarterfinals. A decent performance, although I'm sure their fans weren't happy with it. So, like you see, kind of similar to the Copa America, a bit of a mixed bag in terms of how the success correlates. We've seen some good examples, some bad examples. So a bit of an interesting thing to look back and see how much this really means when it goes to the ultimate competition, the World Cup.
One can say that maybe it prepares those countries, it ignites a chip on their shoulder to do better, and that's why we see so many upsets and the lack of success following up a win in those regional tournaments. But with all these upsets that we've seen in both competitions, I have to ask you, which one do you find more enjoyable, Braden? And again, let's keep in mind this format for, like we've been reiterating throughout the video, which one is more enjoyable? Obviously it's biased, we're American, but if you try to be impartial, which one do you think it's nicer to watch?
Well, I mean, like you said, it's always more sentimental to watch your country participate. But even with that, I'd still say the Euros are more enjoyable. I mean, obviously, if you go back to previous formats of the Copa America, Euros win it hands down. With the current one, it's a lot better. It's going to be a more fun watch with 16 teams adding in our CONCACAF brothers and the US as well hosting it. It was a super great tournament, the Copa America Centenario that was hosted in the US. I think that was a Copa America to remember, one of the most memorable ones in a long time, actually. But I do still think the Euros are more enjoyable, just because from a neutral perspective, there's a lot more games to watch, which is one thing. There's more teams participating. There's an extra knockout round, like I said. So there's more football to watch, which is always a plus. And like I said earlier in the first part of the video, there's more unpredictability. If you look through the predictions that we can make for the Copa America, and we'll have ours out pretty soon, there's a lot of stability, I think, in the group stage. There's a lot of teams that I think you can pinpoint their exact position. Like we know which team is going to make of Group G. We know which teams are going to make it out of Group C, barring a catastrophic collapse from some of those teams. We know the majority of the teams that will be in the knockout stages. And then when you go to the Euros, adding the whole third place team, having four of them make it to the knockout stages, some people may not like it because it does make it a lot easier for teams to, maybe even if they struggle in the group stage. I mean, Portugal got 3 draws when they won it in 2016, didn't even win a game in the group stage, still made it out. Some people don't like it because of that. However, it provides the unpredictability because you really don't know until all the games are done who's going to make it out. Even if a team struggles, they can still make it out and then have a good run in the tournament, which is something you don't see in Copa America. So I think from a neutral perspective, the Euros are a lot more exciting. And not to mention the star power. I mentioned it earlier. There's so many huge world powers involved in the tournament. And then Copa America, it's great watching Argentina. It's great watching Brazil, Colombia, Uruguay. But outside of that, you don't really want to watch Panama. I mean, it's nothing against Panama, but that's not going to get a neutral. It's not going to get a European fan tuned in, excited for Panama versus Bolivia in the group stage.
That's really fair. I'm gonna say I've always found Copa America, even in its very boring kind of days, more enjoyable. But then again, I was born and raised in Brazil, American as well, so maybe I'm the ultimate bias here. I'm gonna say that because of fan culture, I just really like the fan culture in Copa America and the rivalries that are always brewing there because these teams are getting used to. It's a regional conflict, so some of them throw politics in it as well. And all of the times that they play each other, they have to play each other during qualifiers because a lot less countries. It adds more. I feel like the stakes are always higher when the countries play each other. But overall, I think quality of the game, we're not going to discuss that. It's probably better in Europe, honestly, especially because they so many powerhouses there. The last topic that we're going to bring, I think that it is somewhat relevant. And let us know, guys, if you enjoy this type of content, that it's more info based and we bring in information that maybe some of you guys don't really know. So let us know in the comments below, always tailoring the content to you guys. But which one do you think is more impactful to the region, to the cultural relevance? We've seen histories like Wales making it to a semifinal. That's never really going to happen at a World Cup. So which one do you think it would mean more? Honestly, which one impacts the region more and it's more memorable overall?
Well, it seems like you made the case a little bit already there for Copa America. And I will say, I do agree with you on one thing. The best South American fans, which are most of the nations, are the best fans in the world. Europe, don't get me wrong, they have some amazing fans as well, especially when you go, like you said, the Balkan areas. Eastern Europe is absolutely unhinged with their fan culture. I do still think South America edges it, though. But you could make the argument when you add in the CONCACAF teams, maybe it brings down the overall fan base just a little bit on average. I mean, we're American, but I think we can admit the USMNT Ultras, as you like to say, probably one of the worst in the world, especially for, if you look at all, 40 teams that are participating in the Euros and Copa America combined, we probably have the worst fans. And I think overall, adding the CONCACAF teams brings that down a little bit. I would actually go with a tie when it comes to the impact to the culture. And you mentioned the political side of things as well in South America. You can make that argument for the Euros as well. I mean, up until very recently, a lot of the Balkan nations were united under Yugoslavia, and now some of those teams, I mean, we know the hate they have for each other. Hell, they started the whole world war because of it. When those nations go up against each other at a level as significant as the Euros, it makes for a very entertaining and a very important watch. So I do think if you look at the overall impact for the region and the culture, I'm going to say it's a tie because we know football is the identity in a lot of these nations. And like you said, when we see these underdog runs like Wales making it to the semifinals, Greece winning the entire Euros, it unites the country and it brings them together. And that's really one of the only things that can do that to a nation. I think it's really special to watch. And that's why we like international football so much in general. So I'll give it a tie. I think both are hugely significant. If you go more into what's more ingrained into the culture, maybe you can say South America, Copa America edges it just a little bit. But I think I'd go with the tie because it's just so meaningful in both places.
Yeah, I will say that I think since culture is already so established in these South American nations, and when there is an upset like Peru making it far, typically it gets a little bit undermined. Someone will say that, oh, that country wasn't really in it, and oh, it's just a bad crop of players. I will say that, in my opinion, the Euros actually take it. For as weird as that may sound, we see storylines, especially with the third place team going through, like Georgia. Can you imagine if Georgia makes it through? And Georgia are going to play Turkey too. There's a huge rivalry there politically. So I think that overall, I mean, no one in South America is throwing wars here and there. I mean, there was Brazil-Paraguay war, which was the last one, and they're pretty fine with each other. So I think that overall the Euros will take it. But I need to ask you, which one is your favorite, Braden? And which one, again, remind us just on a bit of a call on predictions, just in one word, which one is the winner for either one of those, just to refresh our subscribers' minds. Maybe some of you guys didn't see the predictions. So a winner for each, and which one is your favorite overall?
Well, I won't say my winner for Copa America because that video will be coming out this weekend, so stay tuned for that. My winner for this Euros was France, although, I mean, who knows? Like, I keep bringing it back, the unpredictability. There's a lot of teams I could see winning. England are the favorites, as we know, but there's a lot of very strong teams involved, which is why, like I said, the quality is better. And I think for this edition, this format, I would still say my favorite will be Copa America, just because, I mean, I've made, I think, a lot of the arguments for the Euros in this video, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to the national pride that I have as an American, and getting to watch my national team play in this historic tournament is a bit better than anything that the Euros can offer me. That being said, I'll still be tuning into the Euros with a very, very enjoyable presence, because all of the games are going to be fantastic. I can't wait to watch every single one of them and hopefully make content about them. Let us know in the comments. We know there's been a bit of a divide in the fan base as to whether you guys want to see Euros content or just Copa America. I just want to preface this. If we do make Euros content, it's not going to affect the amount of Copa America content. It's just a bonus. So do keep that in mind when you make your decision in the comments. But I will still just edge Copa America just slightly, just because it means more seeing your country compete in this tournament. But overall, if we look at it in general, this is a very new thing and a very rare thing to see CONCACAF nations compete. So overall, I would say the Euros, but for this specific edition, it has to be Copa America for me.
I will go with the same. Again, completely forgot. We have those predictions coming out, so stay tuned for those. Gonna leave mine as a secret for now as well. And for the Euros, I had a crazy prediction. I mean, looking back, I had Italy making the finals. That's all I'm gonna say. I mean, it's crazy. But I will say my favorite as well for the US, but I can completely understand if someone from Asia or Africa are tuning in, or Oceania, no disrespect to them. If they're tuning in, it's going to be the Euros likely. So it is what it is, but I think it's a good step in the right direction for CONCACAF nations. Let us know down below if you like this type of content. Going a little bit abroad and farther from our USMNT sphere. And like Braden said, one is not competing with the other in the channel. We're going to be covering both at the exact same rate, really. So just let us know if you want that extra bit of Euro content. We really appreciate all of the new subscribers. If you watched this long, let us know your opinions about the video. Again, a bit of a different format, more information based. So please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you next time.